Welcome to Scallywag News, Dirty Puddle Deep Dive, where we ask the big questions that can sometimes get lost down the sofa of news. Today we ask, why did so many people vote for Donald Trump? And despite his controversial single term, why do they continue to support him? What actual benefits did Trump voters get from his presidency? I'd argue there was only one: the massive tax cuts for the super rich and big business. Almost certainly Trump voters, but of course a minuscule fraction of them. The only other significant achievement of the Trump presidency was reshaping the federal judiciary, appointing dozens of right-wing judges to the High Court and 3 Supreme Court judges. This will have a profound and long-lasting effect on the tone of American politics, but again, didn't have any real benefits for Trump supporters. Trump also made life more difficult for immigrants, both those already in the US and those trying to get there. Many Trump voters wholeheartedly support this, but again, it had no real benefit for them. On the flip side of achievements are failures, of which Trump had a couple of extremely high-profile ones. 2 of his main campaign promises were building a southern wall and repealing Obamacare. Any way you measure it, very little new wall was built, and although certain parts of Obamacare were repealed, there was nothing to replace them. The other glaring failure was Trump's response to COVID, downplaying its seriousness, failing to offer clear messaging for public health measures, and actually setting states against each other, scrambling for PPE rather than coordinating any kind of national effort. Deaths per 100,000 is a stat that no amount of spin can easily avoid, and the US comes 7th worst of the world's worst affected countries, which is hard to see as anything less than a fucking disaster. The widespread belief as to why people vote the way they do is simply which candidate they think will have the most actual, real benefits for them. But with Trump, that was clearly not what happened. Even if they thought he would somehow improve their lives, one term in the White House showed that he wouldn't. So why do 80 million Americans still support Trump? The core idea behind Western democracies is that we elect leaders that represent our best interests. But Trump doesn't represent the best interests of his supporters. However, he does represent them, actually represent them. I think it's useful to look at this in the context of the previous president, Barack Obama. Trump supporters looked at Obama and saw an erudite liberal, a black erudite liberal. All of that alienates them and in no way represents who they are. Trump, on the other hand, is openly greedy, ignorant, and bigoted. His supporters look at Trump and they can see themselves. And because he's a success, a billionaire celebrity with enormous power, he not only validates, but celebrates and champions those qualities. The enormous spike in racist hate crimes during Trump's term doesn't represent an increase in racists. It rather represents the climate that Trump fomented, which emboldens racists to express their racism in public. Listen carefully to the interviews with Trumpers, and you'll start to notice a casual label that actually is at the core of Trumpism. They call Donald our guy. And that has been a Scallywag News Dirty Puddle Deep Dive.